Right, tomorrow night, 8 p.m, European football is back under the bright lights at Stamford Bridge when Chelsea take on Servette in the Europa Conference League group stage playoff game. And I know what you're thinking, what's that when it's at home? Well, basically, it is a game that over two legs, Chelsea need to progress through if we are to make it into the Europa Conference League group stages. And despite the fact that I will openly admit that I had never even heard of Servette. I know, football podcaster, how bad is that? This is a game that I think is really important that Chelsea win for both confidence, momentum, and for clarity. And I use that word clarity for one reason, and that is because this is a game that I feel that Enzo Maresca can afford to experiment with his squad somewhat and maybe see one or two of the players that we haven't seen so much of so far under Enzo Maresca. And look, there have been bigger shocks in European football than if Servette were to come to Stamford Bridge and upset Chelsea. But realistically, come on, man. We should be looking to put a few goals past these boys, shouldn't we? I had never heard of them before. I've had a look at them. I think for their whole entire squad, they have 5 national team players registered, i.e. players that play for their respective countries. And let's be honest, it's probably not going to be Brazil, France and Argentina that these boys play for, is it? So in this video, I am going to give you lot, as always, my starting lineup that I want to see run out against Servette. And actually, there are way more talking points in this starting lineup than you may have initially thought. But people, before we get into all that, welcome back to the Joey Knight podcast. If you are new around here and you like the content at the end of the video, please do me a favour by subscribing to the channel. Smash the like button right now. It really, really helps me. And before we get into it, I just want to give you guys a massive shout out and say a big thank you in response to the video that I uploaded yesterday. You know, sometimes when you criticise the sort of portrayal of the club and how different people in the media and even the fan base and whatnot are speaking about the club in a negative light, you're a little bit unsure about how it can come across, and I really didn't want it to come across in the right way, and clearly it came across as I intended it to. So big love to you guys. Couldn't get back to you all individually in the comments, but really, really appreciate it. Let's get into the video. Right, so there are conflicting reports at the moment in the media as to the A-list, they should have called it the A-team really, but the A-list that Chelsea have submitted to UEFA for this game. But I'm going to go on the information I have and try and make sense of it as I am led to believe, and that is that Tosin Adarabioyo, Wesley Fofana, Levi Colwill, Ben Chilwell and Raheem Sterling are all amongst the admissions that have not been included in the squad and are not set to play in this game. Now, there are obviously other players as well, like Petrovic, Trevor Chalobah, who I think we weren't expecting, and to be honest, I don't think any of us expected there to be Raheem Sterling or perhaps even Ben Chilwell in this squad. But the exclusion of Tosin Adarabioyo is one that really, really confuses me, unless there is an injury that we come to find out about in the coming day or so, or today when Enzo Maresca does his press conference, because Tosin Adarabioyo was an unused substitute against Manchester City, but when you look at our defensive options, and more significantly, the options that we've included in this squad, it makes it really confusing as to why we haven't included Tosin Adarabioyo, you know. Axel Disasi, he hasn't played a game in months, has he? And not only that, he's been linked with Newcastle quite heavily over the past sort of 48 hours. Reece James, he was reported to have picked up a minor injury. However, what I would say is we all know that the media love a doomsday Chelsea story, don't we? I literally did a video on this yesterday. So when Reece James has ported up this suspected injury, I'm not too sure if I even believe it, you know. I'm not too sure whether it was just precaution and whether maybe he didn't participate in full first team training. And then the stories leaked out because obviously there's always photographers at training and whatnot. People visiting the ground, and maybe it could have been a case of Reece James is a player that we know is injury prone. I don't think that's disrespectful to say that. I think we understand that and we're not holding it against him, sort of thing. And what I would say is that maybe, you know, like I've had injuries from boxing in the past, sometimes you go, do you know what, my back's hurting a bit today, my knee's hurting a bit today, maybe I don't go sparring. And it's a little bit like that with full first team training. So I'm not sure whether Reece James was even injured. And you've got to remember, he was never actually in contention to play against Man City because he's still serving the match ban for the red card that he picked up late last season. Cucurella is included in that A-list squad. But obviously, he went down with what we feared was a hamstring injury. Turns out it might have been really bad cramp, or it might have been a minor hamstring injury. So that, ladies and gentlemen, means that you might really struggle to pick a starting lineup here. And I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of you that disagree with my starting lineup, but I will try to give context, to give reasons, and to justify all of my selections in this lineup. Right, so you can see it on screen now, and let's talk through it. Jorgensen in goal. We need to give this fella a competitive run out, because otherwise, what was the point in signing him? You know, I really don't understand why we signed him and why we spent that sort of money on him if he was just going to come and play backup when we had other goalkeepers at the club that were in a position to be able to do so. And at this point, look, I really hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong. I've been wrong in the past. I was wrong on Cucurella. I writ him off way too early after one bad season at Chelsea Football Club, and I may be making the same mistakes with Robert Sanchez. But the way I view it at this moment in time, that Sanchez is just a mid-goalkeeper at this moment in time, isn't he? He makes saves that you would expect him to make. He makes saves that you wouldn't expect him to make from time to time. He makes the occasional blunder and he makes the occasional worldie save. But he's not consistent and he doesn't fill you with a sense of security. And that is very much, as a Chelsea fan and a football fan in general, what I want from a goalkeeper, you know. Also, I would say that per average 90 minutes, he makes at least one mistake that could contribute towards us conceding a goal. And it's very hard to actually get the statistics for this, you know, because sometimes, unless a goal or at least a shot on target is registered or a shot on goal, then it doesn't translate and it doesn't go towards the statistics, I should say, in terms of how many mistakes someone is actually making, you know. So there are examples when Robert Sanchez might make a big mistake in a match, but the defender might get there and be able to cut out the error or at least, you know, dispel the error before a shot happens on target. And then it doesn't go towards the statistics. So you really do have to go on the eye test. And the eye test tells me that Robert Sanchez, for so far what I've seen, is no better than Jorgensen with a ball at his feet. Actually, I think Jorgensen looked really good with the ball at his feet, you know. He played against Club America. I thought he looked very comfortable in that pre-season game, but he wasn't really tested from a shot-stopping perspective. And then we saw him in against Real Madrid. He faced 3 shots on target, 2 of which he conceded, 1 of which he saved. It's Real Madrid. I think we would have all expected them to be able to score, and I don't think it would have been much different had Sanchez have been in goal. But what I do think is we really need to give him a run out now so we can see. And ultimately, regardless of all of this, moving Petrovic on is just a stupid decision, in my opinion, because he is a better goalkeeper than both of these boys, in my opinion, you know. I think that, listen, I don't want to necessarily say we'll regret it, because firstly, we don't know if he's going to move on. We haven't found a suitor so far as I know. He hasn't been linked with anyone massively. But also, I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like if you've got a back line in front of you that can play out from the back, how important is it? I'm really not sure. Now, I've started with a back 3 in this lineup, right? And you'll notice that it doesn't include an inverted fullback. And some of you may look at that with raised eyebrows. Those eyebrows may be even more raised when you see that I've got Reece James in there. But as I say, I do think that the whole Reece James injury story just came out because he missed training and it was a precaution. I don't feel like we can go into this one with a back 4 and the inverted fullback, because in Cucurella, listen, when he went down injured against City, I was really worried. And despite Vega coming on and looking pretty good, you know, and obviously in pre-season he's looked pretty good in the showings, and I was excited to have him in, and I am excited to hopefully see him in there in this game, I do think that Cucurella is very clearly our number 1 choice there at the moment. And I don't want to be disrespectful and feel like I'm sort of dispatching of Servette because they're lower level opposition, but look, you don't want to look past any opponent, but we have sort of got to look at the weekend's game against Wolves. Wolves are a very decent outfit, and if you said to me now, do we start Cucurella in this game, Or maybe do we give him some minutes if needed, if he's required of, and things aren't going well? Hopefully they are. And do we rest him for that Wolves game? I'd very much say we just rest him a little bit up for that Wolves game because he's going to be necessary there. And do you know what? He's played a ton of football, Cucurella, hasn't he? Reece played a fair bit in pre-season, maybe more than I expected. So if he did feel a little bit of tightness or fatigue and didn't partake in first team training, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I do think that Reece can come into this match, and I've always believed that if a player comes into the game, we've got 5 substitutes now available to us. If after 20, 30 minutes it's not going well for him, then, we'll sub him off. But what I do believe is, against this level of opposition, we will have a lot more of the ball. That means that the distance of kilometres covered per game and the requirements on Reece James should be lessened in this game, and therefore the workload should be a little bit easier for him to deal with. And in the Premier League game against Wolves, we know that Reece James will not be in contention to start because he's still serving his ban. We know that will then be Malo Gusto. Badiashile in the middle. This is one we got to look at now. He didn't feature against Man City, although he was available. In pre-season, he did play, and obviously Badiashile is a player that I've always said needs his hand held somewhat, When did we see the best of Badiashile? Well, I'll tell you when we saw the best of him. We saw the best of him when he came in January and he actually broke his way into the team and was playing that second half of the season that obviously Graham Potter was the manager, and then Frank Lampard towards the end. And actually, Badiashile looked really good. He looked really confident, competent on the ball, and he looked a very good passer, calm under pressure on the ball. But what are we forgetting here? He had Thiago Silva next to him. And when he had that sort of experience next to him, somewhat holding his hand, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, I think he looks like he plays with a lot more certainty and looks a lot better. However, when you see him with maybe Axel Disasi next to him, who obviously did look shaky in a lot of moments last season, then we saw the bad side of Badiashile. And when he had Trevor Chalobah next to him, he looked pretty good, So I think that when he has a stable partnership in that backline, that's when you're going to see him look good. And I've already touched on Renato Vega over on the left-sided sort of centre-back position of these 3 at the back. I think that he's going to be a player that as the season progresses, we see more and more of. Now, you can see I've gone with a pivot there, Enzo and Lavia, and that means that I have left out Moises Caicedo. And once again, that is also very intentional, and I am looking forward to the Wolves game when I do that, because without giving away too many spoilers here, Caicedo is going to feature for me in the starting lineup should he be fit and available to face Wolverhampton Wanderers. I think that Romeo Lavia offers you from a defensive perspective just as much as Caicedo can, or a similar amount that Caicedo can. And I also feel, without sounding too disrespectful, like Enzo Fernandez was awful in the 10. So I want to see him more in the deep lying role at the moment. And obviously there will be a lot of you guys that are going to write in the comments, and there will be conversations to be had over who our best sort of pivot is if we're playing 2 there and who should be starting there. Right, people, I just want to quickly take this opportunity to tell you about new partners of the channel, Squawka. When you're in the YouTube industry like I am, there is a certain type of service that you could very much do with having on your side, and that is the service that stops you making blunders. And when I'm preparing for some of my videos, I use the website Squawka to use the player comparison matrix, and that helps me get a better understanding of comparing the players that I'm talking about. For example, a lot of you guys know that for every Chelsea game, I put out my preferred starting lineup, and I do look into the underlying numbers of the players I'm picking and the players that I'm comparing, and that's where Squawka comes in. They offer the best player comparison matrix on the internet. The website is so efficient and so easy that even I can use it. For example, when I'm picking from Chelsea's 30 to 40 odd wingers that we've got at the club, I can very easily jump onto Squawka and see how their stats compare. But you don't need to be a YouTuber to need to use Squawka. You could use it for your bets when you're betting on first goal scorer and things like that. It could give you a better indication. Or you could just use it to look like a genius down the pub, and we all like to do that, don't we? So thank you very much to Squawka for not only helping me prepare for my videos, but also partnering up with the channel. So help support me by supporting the guys that support the channel in Squawka. They are linked in the description for this video. Let's get back into it. For the moment, I think that potentially against Wolves, we're going to maybe need to see Romeo Lavia and Caicedo. I'm not decided on that yet. Ultimately, we'll see how the match against Servette goes, and we'll see how things play out there. I don't think Enzo Fernandez was good against Manchester City at all, but I do think that he fared a little bit better once he dropped into that deeper role, and I do think that he can be creative from that deeper role and do a good job at ticking the game over, you know. And Nkunku, listen, I think he's better in this role, in this formation, and this is very much how I see it. You know, we saw this formation the whole way throughout pre-season, and this is what I want to see here, because when you bring in Nkunku a little bit more central rather than over on the left wing, that's when I think you're going to see the creativity really flow from Christopher Nkunku, and I think he's a very, very good player at doing so. Also, I think that because we're going to have so much of the ball in comparison to what we had against Manchester City, you're definitely going to see this system implemented. Otherwise, it would be a bit crazy that we played with it for the most part in pre-season for the whole thing, even despite them being friendly matches against sort of higher level opposition, and then we just abandon it as we come into the actual season. So there you can see Madueke over on the right-hand side. Now, Pedro Neto. Listen, I'm so excited about this boy, man, because I thought he looked really, really promising on his debut. Constantly looking to progress the ball forward and to make something happen. Willing to take on men and work his way through tight spaces. Very, very happy to receive the ball at his feet, but what I also liked was he's also very happy to run in behind, and we really do need that. He plays those little 1-2 passes and runs in behind, and what he does when he's doing that is he gives the defenders a real tough decision to make, and that's, do I go with him and potentially open up an area that can be passed through by the intricate passers we have in our team, the likes of a Cole Palmer, an Nkunku, even a Kiernan Dewsbury Hall? Or do I stay and run the risk that he then finds his way through on goal? And I think that a player that can offer that and give the defences those sort of headaches is a player that will be invaluable. Do you know what else I just like? I like to see a left winger whipping in balls from the left-hand side. It feels like we don't see that anymore. A left footer on the left-hand side, whipping in those balls. He looked to do it quite a few times. He was also arriving at the back post quite a few times himself. I really want to see him get his full debut here for Chelsea. Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, right? I'm starting him in that sort of floating 8 role, and I've got a gut feeling. And my gut feeling is that he gets a goal in this match. And if he doesn't get a goal, I think he gets an assist. I think he's going to be an important player for us. I think he might, in this first season for Chelsea, be somewhat of a rotation player, but it all depends, doesn't it, really? It all depends on how the injury list piles up. Hopefully it doesn't, but we will stick a pin in that and see. And then I've gone with Nicholas Jackson up top. Now, some of you will be calling for Mark Yu, but the way I see it is Jackson was rusty against Manchester City. He hadn't played much in pre-season at all. I think he'd only had, 45 minutes worth of football against Inter Milan at Stamford Bridge, and he still looked promising, he still looked menacing, he still had the ball in the back of the net at one point, didn't he? But obviously, that was offside. He needs to watch that a little bit more, but I think that through playing games, you're going to get your time in that back. And if this was an away match, you know, if we were travelling to, I was about to say Sweden, it's Switzerland that these lot are from. If we were travelling there, then maybe I wouldn't start him in this match, you know. But I do think that coming 4 or 5 days after the game against Manchester City, he's going to be fine to come back in there at Stamford Bridge, lead the line for us. And then potentially, in the second half, I would very much like to see Mark Yu off the bench. Listen, with strikers, you've got to remember, it is a role that depends heavily on confidence, and you can build that confidence against lesser opposition to get your shooting boots on, and then you can translate it and keep it going into the Premier League. So hopefully Nicholas Jackson can get on the score sheet here. Hopefully he can have some good moments, and then he can push forward as we go into the game against Wolves. So as I say, when I've picked this team, I've gone with a mixture of picking a team that I think is fit for purpose and can do the job, but picking a team that is also picked with one eye on Sunday against Wolves. Because I think it's really important now, when you look at our run of games we've got, that we do start getting these wins on the board. Because one of the things that sort of hampered us massively last season was the fact that we didn't get the wins on the board early on in games that we should have got over the line in my opinion, such as the West Ham game. I know people will look at that. We lost it 3-1, but we were the better side in that game. The Nottingham Forest game, I was at that one. The Bournemouth game. There were so many games that we either drew or lost that we should have been picking up points in. So I think it's very, very important to start momentum. Now, just quickly, I just want to touch on Conor Gallagher. He's obviously now departed. In a way, it's kind of the best case scenario and the worst case scenario at the same time. And it's the worst case scenario because we did not want to see Conor Gallagher leave Stamford Bridge. We as the Chelsea fan base love Conor Gallagher, and we all, I think all, you lot might disagree with me in the comments, or one or two of you might, but I think most of us would imagine that if Enzo Maresca had the opportunity to get his hands on Conor Gallagher probably would have become a first team starter for Enzo Maresca. And I think that when you look at Conor Gallagher, you know, he was such an important player for us last season, and despite us having a low league finish for Chelsea terms, we did finish 6 positions above the season before, and I think the plaudits will go to Cole Palmer. By the way, PFA Young Player of the Season, should have been Player of the Season. He's a lot better than Phil Foden. I don't know what went on there, but either way, the plaudits will go to Cole Palmer. But Conor Gallagher, Cucurella, Malo Gusto, all important players in contributing towards us getting a better league finish last season. And when I say best case scenario, what I mean is he could have gone to Spurs, he could have gone to Villa, look at Mason Mount, he could have gone to Man United. So I'm very happy that he didn't go to a rival that I think will be competing against this season. And also, I'm happy for Conor Gallagher that he gets to go and play Champions League football, which for a player of his quality, for a player of his commitment and professionalism, he 100% deserves. Now, we will all miss him. We will all wish him the best, and we will all wish that it had turned out differently. I very much do believe that. And if ever we get the opportunity to welcome him back to Stamford Bridge, I think I can speak for 40,000 fans inside the ground that he will get a standing ovation from the Chelsea fans. And I actually think that Atletico will be a lot closer to Real Madrid this season than Barcelona even will be in the Liga. So all the best for Conor Gallagher. Just quickly, I'm going to touch on the Axel Disasi to Newcastle rumour. Now, I'm not sure if anyone's seen this, but you know Anderson from Crystal Palace, he's gone to Fulham, right? That came out of nowhere, or maybe I just wasn't watching that move and, you know, hadn't heard the rumours about it. But that tells me that Mark Gahey is possibly... Mark Gahey, I'm thinking of Mark Yu. Mark Gahey, similar names. Mark Gahey is possibly staying at Crystal Palace, and Newcastle may have possibly pulled out the race after seeing their first bid for him turned down. And now it looks like they're turning their attentions, or the media are saying that they could be turning their attentions to Axel Disasi. Little bit of a strange one, because we're led to believe that Trevor Chalobah's on the market. And I'm telling you boys now, Trevor Chalobah is 100% a better player than Axel Disasi. So I'm surprised that Newcastle aren't going for Trevor Chalobah, to be honest. But if they do go for Axel Disasi over Trevor Chalobah, I think there's a real silver lining here. And I think that maybe it might mean Trevor Chalobah stays. Am I being too optimistic there? Because look, if Newcastle go for Axel Disasi and they get Axel Disasi, am I going to be gutted to see Axel Disasi go? No, I don't think I can say I'll be gutted, because as much as I hold nothing against him, and as much as actually some of you may have watched my pre-season predictions, I said that if he gets the opportunity and he's playing, he could be a player that sort of redeems himself this season a little bit, because he had mixed performances last season. He had a great game away at the Etihad, Axel Disasi. He had a great game away at Villa Park, but he also had a lot of stinkers, and I'd say he had a lot more howlers of games than he did really, really good performances. But I've had hope there for Axel Disasi. I do think there's a good player in there, and I do think that he could come good. However, he hasn't spent long enough at Chelsea Football Club, as have a lot of these players, for me to be really disappointed if he went out the door. So if he was to go out the door, I think that would heighten our need for another centre-back, or potentially to keep hold of another centre-back. And that man, hopefully, is Trevor Chalobah. So I would really hope that if that does happen, that means that some way we end up keeping hold of Trevor Chalobah. And if he is allowed to train back with the first team, which is an absolute joke that he isn't, he should be training with the first team, he'll break his way into Enzo Maresca's plans, in my opinion. I do think he will. And obviously, look, I don't wish any injury upon any player in our team, but we've got to be realistic and look at the injury sheet from last season. And if they start to pile up a little bit again this season, there's no better man to come in and offer you stability and those constant, consistent performances than Trevor Chalobah. We've lost Conor Gallagher. I'm gutted about it. I really, really hope, I'm still holding out a little bit of hope that we don't lose Trevor Chalobah, because I absolutely love the boy. He's my favourite Chelsea player, you know. So either way, we'll stick a pin in it. We'll see what happens. But I want you lot to let me know your thoughts. I haven't given a score prediction, have I? I'm feeling optimistic, man. I'm going 3-0. I think we'll put a few past these boys, build some confidence, take it to Molineux, and hopefully, for the first time in 2-3 seasons, something like that, we actually get a win away at Wolves. When was the last win away at Wolves? Because in my head, I'm just thinking of that Tomori screamer. There must have been one since then. That feels like quite a while ago. I think Lampard was still manager then. That was in his first spell. So either way, I'm going 3-0 against Servette. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts on my starting lineup on the team sheet. I know there's a lot left down to the imagination because there's a lot of uncertainty around who's actually eligible to play at this moment in time. But either way, I wanted to get the video out for you guys. I will see you all in the next one.